All right, so today I wanted to start by talking about this story out of, talk about this story out of ABC News, and it's titled 40% of Americans don't have $400 in the bank for emergency expenses, Federal Reserve. They say almost 40% of American adults won't be able to cover a $400 emergency with cash savings or a credit charge that they would quickly pay off. A Federal Reserve survey finds almost 27% of those surveyed would need to borrow the money to sell something to come up with $400, and an additional 12% would not be able to cover it at all, according to the Federal Reserve's 2018 report on the economic well-being of U.S. households released Thursday. Now, again, I don't know why it takes so long to come up with that stuff, but anyway, nonetheless. In addition, 12% of adults said they wouldn't be able to pay their current monthly bills if faced with the unexpected $400 expense. The survey found the 2018 results are very similar to those found from 2017. Overall, the number of people who said they were able to handle unexpected expenses is on the rise since it began in 2013. However, 17% of adults in the U.S. said that they were not able to fully pay off all their bills, all their current month's bills. Meanwhile, medical costs yielded other hurdles. 1 in 5 adults had major unexpected medical bills to pay last year, and 1 in 4 skipped necessarily medical care in 2018 because they couldn't afford it. The survey revealed. Now, these numbers are, they're somewhat alarming. And I mean, the first thing I would point out too is that something tells me the Canadian numbers are probably relatively similar to this. I mean, if anything, the American economy in 2018 was better than the Canadian economy. Um, I guess technically we don't have the whole healthcare thing to worry about, but the difference being is that the government has that cost to bear. So there is a little bit of difference. But again, the whole point here being is that um, people don't realize just how much of a house of cards the whole system is. Like, people don't realize just how much of a house of cards the whole system is. And now we have this whole pandemic situation, and my guess is that these numbers have gone higher even yet. My guess is that these numbers have gone even higher yet. Now, the government solution is let's just print out money and give it to people so they don't, go homeless. But again, that's a temporary solution at best. And this is where the left goes fundamentally wrong. Is that number one? They think that just printing money and giving it to people is a legitimate solution, which it isn't. That is the definition of a quick fix. You know a quick fix. The quick fix fallacy or whatever you want to call it, because giving people free money doesn't fix the underlying problem. Because what happens when you give people free money? Well, what do lower income, lower intelligence people spend money on? They spend money on stuff they really don't need. At least a lot of this stuff they don't need. Now, you got to pay your bills, but how many of these people do you see? These people on welfare and stuff. How many of them have a nice big TV? How many of them have the newest iPhone? Well, a lot of them. So again, they're not just spending this money on actual necessities, right? They're not just doing that. Um, so what do? Again, Amazon as well. They spend money on Amazon. This is what ends up happening is because um, rich people are positioned in a way that they make money off people making stupid decisions, right? Why is Amazon worth so much money? Because people want to buy stuff, and not only that, they want to buy stuff and they don't want to have to go to the store to do it. They want to buy stuff. A lot of it they don't need. Um, and they don't want to go to the store to do it. So it just breeds even more laziness. It breeds even more. It makes it even easier to make impulsive buying decisions, right? Because if you want to make an impulse buy, something that you may need, you may not need. In the old days, you had to go to the store to do it. Nowadays, you can just go on your phone and within a couple minutes, or on your computer within a couple minutes, you can have it ordered right to your front step, right? So it's a lot easier to make these impulse buys, which is why you see the rich getting so much richer, is because the way that they make money is when people make stupid decisions. Now, there's some rich people that make money when people make smart decisions as well. I think the difference being is that rich people are smart enough to recognize what areas are going to make the most money, and they position themselves accordingly, right? Because let's just say that everybody, overnight was going to be like, yeah, we're gonna start saving even more money. Well, they would just position themselves in, they would get into the financial industry, they would get exposure there, they would get exposure, in banks and all this kind of stuff, right? So the problem I'm trying to get at here is that when you give people free money, you're trying to fix the problem of poverty. They're trying to fix the problem of the gap between the rich and the poor, right? But the problem is that it won't fix that problem. It won't fix that problem because the rich people will just make money off that. Now, what's their solution to that? Oh, let's just tax the rich people more. Let's just tax the rich even more. Well, that doesn't work either. Look at California. How has that worked out for them? The rich people just leave, or at least a lot of them do. Um, so again, the problem is that they're trying to fix a problem that they created. If you wanted to fix these problems, well, what you need to do is you need to stop encouraging people to be poor. Like, this is the big problem, that a lot of these people are people that are basically paid to be poor. These are people that are on welfare, a lot of them at least, and they're paid to be poor because if you're on welfare, I think it's in, what is it, like 35 to 40 states, somewhere in there. Um, you make more money on welfare if you qualify for all the welfare programs than you do making minimum wage. So in almost every state, you make more on welfare than you do on minimum wage. So why in the world would you work a minimum wage job? Not only that, on the top of that, you're getting paid to sit at home and do nothing. So you'd probably have to be making 20, 30% over minimum wage to make it even before they would even consider it. So this is the big problem when it comes to this kind of stuff, is that the government is creating these problems. The government is creating these problems. The other big thing too is that the the good paying jobs are so much harder to obtain these days. And it's not necessarily that you need to be an engineer or some, making very large amounts of money to get by these days. The problem is that the cost of living is so much more these days. The cost back in the day, two generations ago in the 1950s and 60s, you could have a nice middle class house, you could have a couple cars, you could go on a decent vacation every year, you know, for what is the equivalent of like 60, $70,000, nowadays. You can't do that now. You can't do that, especially in the big cities. Maybe in rural areas, maybe, or in the really small cities. But in a big city, in Canada as well, you can't do that these days. It's not possible. Now, why is that? It's because government regulation. It's because mass immigration. It's because all of this kind of stuff. The goal of governments when it comes to this kind of stuff should be, how do we create the most amount of high paying jobs as possible? Meanwhile, how do we lower, or at the very least keep the cost of living the same? But let's look at Canada. What are we doing in Canada? We're constantly increasing the carbon tax. We have some of the highest levels of immigration in the per capita in the world. So what are we doing? We're making everything worse. If the government's goal, if the liberal government's goal was, let's make the cost of living go up as much as we possibly can. Let's make obtaining a good paying job as hard as we possibly can. They're doing a pretty good job of that. They're doing a pretty good job of that. And because they're doing it under the guise of, social justice and all this garbage they like to virtue signal about, nobody really cares, which just really astounds me. It really astounds me how so many people can just go along with this stuff and not even care. Like, it just really astounds me. It really astounds me. Um, so like I say, what are the solutions? What the goal? Like I said, the goals need to be, how do we increase wages? Because again, median wages haven't gone up in 20 years, at least nothing, at least bit significantly. Median wages haven't gone up. Um, so that's something that needs to happen. That's something that needs to happen. Now, how does that happen? I think number one, you need to deregulate. You need to deregulate. You need to stop encouraging so many people to go to college, because this is another big thing too. Is that, yeah, you may have a good paying job, but you're in debt for $150,000 coming out of college. So yeah, you're making 80 to 100,000 a year, but it's going to take you 5 to 10 years to pay out, depending on how much you pay off, to pay off that loan, right? So again, the goal should be to get people the highest paying jobs with the least amount of overhang. There is no reason why so many people need college degrees to work a lot of these jobs. Why do you need a college degree to be an accountant? Why do you need a college degree to program a computer? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. You can learn that stuff for way cheaper and way faster if competition was allowed. The problem is that it's not happening now. I've heard things that show that Apple may start training their a lot of their employees in house. Now, how are they going to do it? They're going to do it for way cheaper. They're going to do it for way cheaper because they recognize that a college degree is largely worthless, at least for most things. Now, for some things, yeah, the problem is that it's largely worthless. Now, is it intrinsically worthless? Not necessarily. One of the biggest reasons why a college degree is not worth as nearly as much as what people think it is. Number one, it's because you got to waste 4 or 5 years of your life doing it. And number two, you're probably going to have to spend into the six figures, especially when you include lost income that you could have otherwise been accumulating. You're going to be losing six figures while doing it. Like, do people, it boggles my mind how people genuinely believe that the most costly and timely efficiently way to become an accountant is 4 or 5 years of your life and into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, you honestly believe that if you went to a professional accountant and you said, I can pay you to train me to be a, a professional accountant, can you do it in less time than 4 years and for less than $100,000? Of course they could. They could probably do it for less than half of that, right? Less than half, maybe even a quarter of that. I bet you they could do it within a year and maybe $25,000. Just off the top of my head, if I was guessing, I bet you they could. So why are we doing it this way? It makes no sense. Now, what are some other solutions? Well, number one, we got to cut immigration, because all immigration is just driving down wages. Because you bring in immigrants from the third world, well, what do? They're fine working the lower paying jobs. They're people that are more likely to be on welfare, meaning they're going to be more of a drain on the system, meaning you're going to have to raise taxes, right? So number one, we got to deregulate. Number two, we got to drastically cut immigration. Number three, we got to cut taxes. That's another big one too, because I mean, you look at the carbon tax. The carbon tax is going to be costing the average person into the thousands of dollars, and it's doing nothing. Like, the solutions to get us pointed in the right direction are incredibly easy when it comes to this stuff, and it really just boggles my mind why people resist it so much, because it's so obvious. Now, is there a perfect solution? Do I have a perfect solution? No, nobody does. But I have something that's a heck of a lot better than what we're doing right now. A heck of a lot better than what we're doing right now. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on those other platforms if you haven't already. If you want to donate, you can do that as well. Like I say, I appreciate whatever support I can get, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more.